非美术馆是坐落在一个社区里的一个非盈利的机构，刚好它一墙之隔有个菜市场，然后我会发现菜市场里的摊贩们每个手都有不同的故事。我叫何志生，我是福建人，现在在广州华南理工大学建筑学院教书，同时也是非美术馆的馆长。过去的11年，摊贩从来没有来过。我们一直说生活就是艺术，那为什么他们不来美术馆？所以我就叫学生跟摊贩一起生活跟工作了2个月。摊贩对他们的手特别重视，那我就建议鼓励我的学生，可不可以去拍手，先做一个展览。海鲜档的操哥的手20多年都是泛白的，就是因为他长期泡水。鸡肉档的邱姐的手，因为他长期用刀，他的右手是一个非常非常大的刀剪。美女的手特别好玩，她不识字，每天把她挣到的钱的数字写在手上，她拍一张相片寄给她的老公看。古街的墙是宋东老师的一个作品，能跟川式胡同的房子拆了之后丢弃的，从北京运过来的。这个手在宋东老师的墙上展览了1天，我很记得，就是一个摊贩海鲜的一个阿姨，11年来第一次，就是她为了一个跟自己生活有关系的展览来到了美术馆，然后所有摊贩就过来了，一起完成了这个布展。第2天，另外一个摊贩就过来了，何老师，你们这个照片可不可以给我们领回去，放到我们的摊位上？接下去就是说，摊贩自发的在菜市场布展，把手跟营业执照放在了一起。就那一瞬间，我就觉得我们的作品才刚刚开始。他们原本以为他们只是寄生在社区里的一群人，所以这个作品让他们找出了这个菜市场，参与到社区里的一些活动。2017年底，我们发起了一种无界博物馆计划。踏入到这个社区的时候，你就踏入到了美术馆。生活在社区里的人，他们用自己的创造力或智慧，怎么去利用这里的空间。比如说社区的阿姨，她用砖块啊、石头啊，就摆了一个他们打牌的一个装置，特别好玩的。我们发动过一个叫移动的美术馆，通过船为媒介，很多社区的居民会过来，就在床上野餐啊，在床上睡觉啊，在床上看电影啊，床就变成了一个移动的公共空间。现在是每1个月会组织1次居民过来种植，各种各样的容器、马桶啊，是吧？浴缸啊、箱子啊、桌子啊，就都种满了植物。之前完全跟自己生活没有关系的一个场所，变得就是我的情感、我的记忆都在融入到这个空间里面了。每几个月我们会做1次百家宴，环卫工人、有摊贩、居民、艺术家、学者。然后今天是第1次，摊贩自己做菜到美术馆，跟社区里的居民一起吃饭。所以我们真正的是把美术馆做成了街头美术馆。那就是对这一些群体，我们都会觉得他们是很弱小的、很底层的，他们比我们有更多动人的故事。让不同阶层的人相互理解，真的是太难了。但我觉得通过一个这样子的作品，可以改善他们。所以我觉得美术馆最终的目的是怎么把他们联系在一起。 我觉得这就是一个艺术的一个很重要的一个力量。非美术馆是坐落在一个社区里的一个非盈利的机构，刚好它一墙之隔有个菜市场，然后我也发现菜市场里的摊贩们每个手都有不同的故事。我叫何志生，我是福建人，现在在广州华南理工大学建筑学院教书，同时也是非美术馆的馆长。过去的11年，摊贩从来没有来过。我们一直说生活就是艺术，那为什么他们不来美术馆？所以我就叫学生跟摊贩一起生活跟工作了2个月。摊贩对他们的手特别重视，那我就建议鼓励我的学生，可不可以去拍手，先做一个展览。海鲜档的操哥的手20多年都是泛拔的，就是因为他长期泡水。鸡肉档的邱姐的手，因为他长期用刀，他的右手是一个非常非常大的刀剪。美女的手特别好玩，她不识字，每天把她挣到的钱的数字写在手上，她拍一张相片寄给她的老公看。古街的墙是宋东老师的一个作品，门跟窗是胡同的房子拆了之后丢弃的，从北京运过来的。这个手在宋东老师的墙上展览了1天。我很记得，就是一个摊贩海鲜的一个阿姨，11年来第一次，就是她为了一个跟自己生活有关系的展览来到了美术馆，然后所有摊贩就过来了，一起完成了这个布展。第2天，另外一个摊贩就过来了，何老师，你们这个照片可不可以给我们领回去，放到我们的摊位上？接下去就是说，摊贩自发的在菜市场布展。把手跟营业执照放在了一起，就那一瞬间，我就觉得我们的作品才刚刚开始。他们原本以为他们只是寄生在社区里的一群人，所以这个作品让他们找出了这个菜市场，参与到社区里的一些活动。2017年底，我们发起了一种无界博物馆计划。踏入到这个社区的时候，你就踏入到了美术馆。生活在社区里的人，他们用自己的创造力或智慧，怎么去利用这里的空间。比如说社区的阿姨，她用砖块啊、石头啊，就摆了一个他们打牌的一个装置，特别好玩的。我们发动过一个叫移动的美术馆，通过船为媒介，很多社区的居民会过来，就在床上野餐啊，在床上睡觉啊，在床上看电影啊，床就变成了一个移动的公共空间。现在是每1个月会组织1次居民过来种植，各种各样的容器、马桶啊，是吧？浴缸啊、箱子啊、桌子啊，就都种满了植物。之前完全跟自己生活没有关系的一个场所，变得就是我的情感、我的记忆都在融入到这个空间里面了。每几个月我们会做1次百家宴，环卫工人、有摊贩、居民、艺术家、学者。然后今天是第1次，摊贩自己做菜到美术馆，跟社区里的居民一起吃饭。所以我们真正的是把美术馆做成了街头美术馆。它就是对这一些群体，我们都会觉得他们是很弱小的、很底层的，他们比我们有更多动人的故事。让不同阶层的人相互理解真的是太难了，但我觉得通过一个这样子的作品可以改善他们。所以我觉得美术馆最终的目的是怎么把他们联系在一起，我觉得这就是一个艺术的一个很重要的一个力量。
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Can you hear me? Okay. So, good evening and good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. It's really a very good evening. We have the honor to invite Jason Ho to give us a talk on his recent work. I think for many of you guys, I think it's kind of waste time to introduce Jason Ho again, but I still need to do that as a schedule. Okay, Dr. Jason Hall is a founder of Mapping Workshop, and he is also an associate research fellow of the School of Architecture at South China University of Technology. Dr. Jason Hall is also a director of FEI Arts Museum Guangzhou. So today's topic is about the superordinary, and in other words, he asked a very important question. As landscape architects don't study the everyday, how are they going to design for it? Landscape architects must understand how ordinary people use and read spaces in their everyday lives before they start making new rules and conditions. So I believe this talk will be extremely helpful for the Division of Landscape Architecture at the University of Hong Kong. And I also appreciate the audience from other institutions and countries, cities. So hope you enjoy the night. Now I will give my my place to Jason. And thank you, Dr. Jason.
Thanks, Jianbing. Am I going to share my screen, right? Okay. Jianbing, can you see the screen, my screen?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Jianbing, for your very short introduction. And I'm very flattered, and also for giving me, thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts and present my work here. I'm very honored and delighted to be part of this seminar and series organized by HKU, Division of Landscape Architecture. When Jianbing asked me for the title of this lecture a few weeks ago, I didn't really know what I'm going to talk. When compared to Jianbing's research achievements, haven't done anything serious and significant over the past years. I don't know why. I guess I just lost my passion of becoming a scholar a long time ago. So I gave Jianbing a very huge title called Superordinary, which doesn't really make any sense. I do think this is not a good one for discussion in a very serious lecture. So I decided to scale down the topic and be more specific and focused. As a result, in today's lecture, I will express my thoughts about superordinary through talking about informal space, the space that I have been particularly looking at over the past 10 years. However, I wish I could conduct this talk in Mandarin. My English getting really bad. That's required by the faculty. I will have to do it in English. It's just very difficult for me somehow to use another language to describe the complexities and richness of everyday life. So please excuse me if I didn't make things clear enough in my lecture. And I do believe the beautiful images in the slides will talk for me. As you know, today there are a large amount of informal public spaces in Chinese cities. They are enormous, super neat, and were designed by landscape architects, but they are barely used and left empty most of the time. Public space in China is becoming increasingly controlled and regulated. Many of them are furnished with a set of fixed programs and a designated circulation pattern. In many public spaces, visitors must follow specific behavior patterns. Public space is becoming more and more prescribed instead of being opportunistic. But on the other hand, informal space is everyday space. It's more appropriated by the ordinary people and less intervened by authorities and landscape architects. However, when one talks about informal, it's often associated with the terms of spontaneity, improvisation, or anarchy. The questions are, can formal space and informal space coexist together? And if can, what makes public space informal? And can we design informality? So today I'm not going to talk about something very big and formal like big cities, and big systems, and big policies, but something very small, very ordinary, and very informal, something that is closely associated with the everyday lives of ordinary people. And first, I would like to share with you some of my stories, experience, or some observations I made on the journey of my life. In 1992, my parents bought a house in a community in Fujian province after their retirement. In front of our house, there was a raised rose garden bed. In the first week after we moved in, my mom gave me a weird task. She asked me to remove one rose tree every day from the garden. And I did without asking why. And 2 weeks later, 15 rose trees were removed without notice. As a result, a small empty plot was formed in the rose garden. And this empty plot later became my mother's secret vegetable plot. And very soon, the neighbors found out and followed our footsteps. 2 months later, the rose garden provided by landscape architects was completely transformed into an informal vegetable garden. What happened next was incredible. While working in this vegetable garden together, the neighbors who never spoke a word to each other before began to interact and initiate conversations. The transformation of a rose garden to a vegetable garden also inspired the rest of the residents in this community to turn other garden beds into the vegetable plots. In 2017, the local government launched an urban renewal project, mainly targeting the old communities and urban villages. And sadly, all the vegetable plots in our community were removed on the excuse of their informality. The rose garden in which my mother grew vegetables was reprogrammed into an outdoor fitness court filled with some weird pull-up equipment. According to the new rules and regulations, the locals can only use this equipment either in the morning or at night. And for the rest of the day, the area must remain tidy and clean. In my understanding, this fitness court is nothing but an image project built for displaying the local government's achievements rather than for use by the people. Due to the time restrictions and its inconvenience, the fitness court has been left unused most of the time since its completion. And today, the fitness court and its surroundings have been reoccupied by the locals and become a parking space for both vehicles and shared bikes. Next to my place, there is a community garden. In response to the failure of this transformation project, I made an alternative pull-up equipment in the garden for the locals to use by simply tying a wooden stick on the tree trunks. Surprisingly, this makeshift pull-up equipment is far more popular than those provided by landscape architects in the garden bed. The only problem is the stick is a bit too high. And sometimes people need to use other items to help reach the stick. One day, without notice, someone installed 2 metal pedals on the tree trunk to help those who cannot reach the stick. After my parents' retirement, my father spent lots of time in the community garden. My father is a chess fan. Every day he goes to the garden playing chess with his friends. In an unusual way, my father will look for any possible spot in the park and turn it into a bizarrely beautiful chessboard. Even in a dangerous spot, my mother has been skeptical about his location strategies, and she always asked me to check on him when he went to play chess in the park, just in case he fell into a river of his excitement. Speaking of the chessboard, there's another case I'd like to share about how ordinary people can transform situations with small things. In 2021, the local authority of Shanghai's Putuo district installed metal bars on the street benches to stop homeless people sleeping on them. And since then, the local authority has been criticized as inhumane. Many landscape architects and scholars started worrying that these metal bars must stop the locals, must stop the people from coming to the streets and destroy street life. On the contrary, the locals didn't leave or complain because of these metal bars on the benches. Instead, they continuously reinvented new tactics and strategies of appropriating space. For example, in a very ingenious way, they started taking advantage of these metal bars and used them as supportive structures for placing their chessboards. Immediately, the street benches become very popular chess play spots for the locals. But we all know that one metal bar is not enough for supporting the chessboard. So the locals started looking for another item on site with exactly same height as the metal bar. In the end, they found what they looked for, bricks from the nearby tree gratings. Only because of these very small things like metal bars and bricks, the chess game can be played on the bench. In 2008, I think in 2008, my family relocated to another city and started living in a huge gated community. Inside this gated community, a very famous landscape architect designed a classic Chinese courtyard garden. And sadly, the courtyard garden was turned into a huge clothes drying area by the residents not long after it was built. Due to the humid weather of the city, most people living there do not need a green space. They need a space to dry their clothes and beddings every day whenever it's sunny. And not far away from this gated community, my parents are currently living in. There is a university campus surrounded by the urban villages. On the village side, many local vendors set up makeshift kitchens next to the boundary wall to cook meals for the university students on the other side. These ingenious vendors created a convenient and simple system for the students to choose the meals they would like to have. For example, a menu board is installed on top of the wall. And then the students can place orders by ringing a bell attached to the wall on the university side. In some sections of the boundary wall, there is the difference in elevation on two sides. In order to tackle this problem, the vendors used an ordinary clothes pole. I don't know if it's a dressing stick or clothes pole. I call it clothes pole, to deliver meals to the students on the other side. As these makeshift kitchens do not contain their own water supply, vendors obtain water from a nearby public toilet. On many occasions, the space around the public toilet is used as business support space for vendors' food preparation. For example, vendors often wash their vegetables and dishes in specified wash areas located near to the public toilet. And in this case, menu board, a bell, a clothes pole, and even a public toilet are the significant micro infrastructures that support the vendors' food delivery business and contribute to the informal use of the boundary space. And this is in 2015 or 2016, and after the completion of my PhD study in Australia, came to Guangzhou for a brand new career. I stayed in a place next to the metro station in Guangzhou's Peking district for a couple of years. Every afternoon around 5 o'clock, the street vendors gathered together in front of the gate of the metro station and displayed their selling items on the edge of the staircase, turning the staircase into a pop-up marketplace. This was the place where I bought vegetables every day. So landscape architects are used to looking at space from the top. Well, not just landscape architects, I guess most designers. So small details are usually ignored. But you see all these everyday informal occupations I mentioned above, like the garden for growing vegetables, the tree for doing pull-ups, the bench for playing chess, the clothes pole for delivering food, and the staircase for selling vegetables. Always make me wonder how landscape architects can learn from these informal occupations and their incredible resilience. Can providing micro-infrastructures become a way of promoting informal uses of public space? In order to answer these questions, I further carried out an observation exercise in a Guangzhou's community park a few years ago. The park is located in an old community of Guangzhou. It's filled with trees and a few landscaping rocks. Due to the lack of basic infrastructures such as seeds, the park was quite empty and inactive. Without seeds, I observed that the locals appropriated the rocks as their makeshift seeds, and this act of appropriation inspired me to conduct a spatial experiment in this park. In 2019, which is 2 years ago, I brought my studio students, landscape architecture students, into this community and asked them to observe the informal practice of the locals in the public spaces of this community, and to reveal what type of specific materials the locals would use to help their informal practice. In the end of this exercise, every student must find a local material that is directly associated with an act of informal occupation in this community, and then bring this material into this park. Together, all these local materials, such as commercial leaflets, bricks, concrete rocks, planks, egg trays, and even plastic stools, brought by the students, were piled up and left under a tree canopy. What I did next is I started documenting how the locals would use these materials to promote informal uses of this park according to their demands. After seeing these materials, the homeless, the street workers, and the locals came immediately and started unpacking, moving, and rearranging these materials according to their needs. Some became seats and others were turned into tables. And they used these materials to create different spatial combinations in different locations of this park for different purposes, such as gathering and sleeping, and watching movies, and playing cards mostly. And during this period of time, some materials, some items were disappeared, but new ones were brought in by the locals to create more spatial combinations. What's fascinating about ordinary people is everyone can take advantage of these materials found in this park and create their own spaces according to their desires and even physical conditions. For example, they used a range of very specific materials from a PVC foam board to an egg tray to adjust the height of seats in their own creative ways. So this type of informal occupation of space can never be captured in a bird's eye view or through a top-down model. However, landscape architects don't anticipate on designing for these people, I'm sure. But by knowing how these people use the space, landscape architects can certainly plan conditions or provide micro-infrastructures to facilitate informal uses of space. Landscape architects will have to plan spaces for such informal and volatile activities that cannot always be well prescribed and predicted. It's better to plan for what is inevitable than to turn totally blind eyes to the future. So from this exercise, I began to understand that informal practice is not at all a chaotic phenomenon. It can become highly specific once you closely observe the people who use it and the activities that take place there. In other words, informal practice responds to very particular circumstances. It only takes place in a specific place and requires very, very specific conditions and macro infrastructures. It's governed by opportunities instead of rules and regulations. In 2015, as I mentioned before, I came to Guangzhou from Australia and I stayed in a place right next to the Pearl River in Guangzhou's Peking district. This riverside walkway was my everyday running track for around 5 years. And this area is mainly this area is mainly occupied by the elders. Regardless of a large aging population living here, this 5-kilometer long riverfront walkway was seriously lack of basic infrastructure, like sittings again. It was very empty most of the time. There were only few elders coming here with their own plastic stools. And this immediately got me to think, how could I attract more people, more elders to come and use this walkway by providing macro infrastructures. So I began with looking at what is already there. Something small, something portable, something live and free to take. In the end, I targeted the trash cans placed on the walkway. There's not many people coming here. Some of the trash cans remained very empty. And surprisingly, I found out that the lid, the top, can be removed from the trash can by twisting it around. This was the moment I asked myself a very weird question. What if I removed all the lids from the trash cans and placed them along the walkway? What would happen? Excuse me. On 18 October 2015, I remember it was Sunday. I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning and started my illegal mission. In 5 hours, I took 253 lids of the trash cans along the walkway. However, I need to make a kind reminder here to the audience. Please do not follow what you are seeing now in these slides. It's illegal to do so. Trust me, I did only for the sake of my research. So, and then I placed the lids randomly on the walkway. In addition, clean up the surface of every lid and stick a free to use note on the top. I had no idea how long these lids would remain there before the local urban management officers find out and take back. It doesn't matter. After doing this, I went to Chengdu and did a workshop there. 1 week later, I came back to the walkway and to see what happened there. I never realized that this was one of the most exciting moments in my life. Just check the time. Along the walkway, I saw many groups of people, many the elders from the nearby communities, gathering together and playing cards. They are gambling. In a very creative way, the elders began to appropriate the trash can lids for different informal uses. Some of them were seats, while others became tables. I also observed that there was more rubbish in the trash cans than ever before. Without these lids, it's easier for the public to throw the rubbish. Very sadly, 5 weeks later, the lids were all removed from the workway by the local urban management officers, and the trash cans were replaced by new ones whose lids cannot be taken off anymore. In the meantime, a message was delivered to the elders from the local authorities. Whoever uses the public trash cans again will receive a heavy fine. Just like the saying goes, one door closes, another one opens. What I didn't expect was that the elders didn't give up and leave the workway. They fought for it. In order to maintain their established neighborhood relations and social activities, they continued to occupy the workway by bringing their own used furniture from home as the replacements of the trash can lids. As you can see, from a big sofa to different types of chairs and tables. And suddenly the workway became an auto museum of used furniture, secondary furniture. With this furniture at hand, the elders started extending their occupations further along the workway. In order to make contribution, I also donated a broken cabinet for the elders, for the public to use on the workway, but unfortunately, no one really interested in this cabinet. Not long after, the elders started doing another thing, another bigger thing, and they started redesigning the workway. They started destroying the workway, and the level of their interventions ranged from light to heavy. For example, in order to make their seats more comfortable, the elders rolled the concrete benches while sitting on chairs. This act is definitely a huge insult for landscape architects who designed this place. Or, in order to lower the stone tables, the elders took off their fixed stone legs and then readjusted the height of the tables by using different combinations of materials. How amazing it is. And then the elders used the dismantled stone legs, the fixed legs, and taken off from the table. They became seats, they became makeshift seats and tables. One day, the locals brought a huge sofa set on the workway, which immediately draw the attention of the elders. It became a popular spot, not just for the elders, but also for the homeless. In combination with the sofa, the cabinet contributed was finally used by the elders for playing chess, just like the metal bars I mentioned before. One of the surface of the cabinet became a supportive structure for placing the chessboard. No matter what, the elders can always find a unique and creative way to promote informal uses of the workway by taking advantage of the furniture given on the spot. From 2017, I think from the end, at the end of 2017, the numbers of people coming to use this walkway suddenly went up. Therefore, a few leaders of the elders stepped up and decided to help maintain the public order of the walkway. They found a grassroots association called the Home of the Elderly. What a beautiful name. And firstly, the Home of the Elderly Association established a repair team to take responsibility for all the broken furniture on the walkway. And secondly, the association also set up a patrol team to stop smoking, gambling, and littering on the walkway. They even made no smoking and no littering notice along the walkway under an assumed name of the local law enforcement department. It's a fake name. On March 2018, as some people here might know, I went to a talk show and shared this walkway project with the public for the first time, which triggered a public debate nationally. The video of my talk received over 5 million views on internet just in 2 days. However, using the trash can lids and furniture as the tools of carrying out informal practice on the walkway aroused media interest, receiving different critical comments. An article raised such a question: why don't the local government stop the public from using their own furniture by providing more decent seats on the walkway? And they did. However, this time the local authorities didn't remove the elders' furniture and creations on the walkway, just like how they did to the trash can lids last time. Instead, they added 2 things on the walkway. Firstly, as the media suggested, they quickly installed hundreds of water-facing seats along the walkway. Take the time. But it was turned out to be a failure. The seats left unoccupied again most of the time. This type of spatial arrangement is hard to trigger face-to-face conversations or interactions. No one likes sitting there and staring at water all the time like an idiot. In fact, the elders like facing the streets and observing things, watching people come and go on the streets. What is good about the trash can lids or the furniture is people can move them and rearrange them at will and use them as tools to curate space according to their desires. And this empowered them to be in charge of this place. And they are the owners, they are the designers. Sorry, jumping, I think I might be over time. Is that okay?
I think it's totally fine as long as you're happy to continue.
Okay, just take my time then, just in case you can hear me. So
yeah, take your time. Okay.
So without having any sense of ownership on these fixed seats provided by the local authorities, the visitors started leaving their rubbish there, and after they used these seats, and waiting for the sanitation workers to clean up. However, one good thing about these water-facing seats is the locals like to use them as supportive structure for hanging out their beddings in a sunny day. The second thing the government did after my public speech was to provide a number of wheelchair ramps around the walkway for the elders who cannot walk. Apart from those furniture brought by the elders, this is another type of significant infrastructures provided by the local authorities to further promote the informal uses of this walkway. And I think that time is wrong. I think it's in the middle of 2018, not 2019. With the help of the Home of the Elderly Association, an informal barber shop was set up on the walkway, serving the elders who gathered there. Today, this walkway has become a place where different social groups, from the sanitation workers and the delivery guys to the homeless people, can gather together and interact with each other. This further was taken during the pandemic, just a few months ago. The Walkway project suggests a different way in which landscape architects in China could act when dealing with public spaces, whether through direct intervention with the site or by provision of micro infrastructures that could enable informal uses to take place. This project is an example in terms of how designers can transform situations with small changes. Designers like landscape architects can do so much more than just draw up a top-down master plan. Thank you. On the other hand, this walkway project challenges not merely the ways of informal space being understood and imagined by authorities, by governments, and by designers, but also challenges the production of informal space. So I feel that there is an urge to explore new ways that landscape architects can work with informality, and to expand the role of landscape architect. Studies in informality do not define the conventional design analysis, but instead offering alternative ways of seeing, thinking, and acting. However, in all the above mentioned projects, from my mother's vegetable garden to my father's chessboard, to the vendors' clothes-pole delivery, and to the walkway project I just shared, I'm not interested in the image of informal, but rather what is behind it, what caused it, and how can we use it as landscape architects. More importantly, this I think this workaway project allows me to understand how an informal quality of a space can be promoted without massive destruction and become a significant design element for the future public domain in Chinese cities. This is particularly relevant in contemporary Chinese urbanism, as formal and informal spaces continuously coexist and operate together at the same time. I guess I'm going to use this photo as the end of my today's lecture. This is a photo of me taken in, I think, in 1985. I have no idea. I guess around 8-ish. In 1985, my sister's friend took a photo. My sister's friend from Beijing. She came to the village and took a photo of me in front of the house my father and my uncles built together in Fujian's village. In 2008, the area where my house was located became a new city that had nothing to do with us. So, growing up in a country like China, I saw massive construction and destruction of cities every day. And this never-ending large-scale construction and destruction of cities have kept reminding me as a landscape architect, before we start transferring our conceptual drawings onto a real-life context and making new rules and conditions, we must understand how ordinary people living there use and read spaces in their everyday lives. And do not forget that sometimes landscape architects can change situations with very small design gestures, just like how the Chechkan leads have completely transformed the workway and enriched the everyday lives of people living around. I think I got last slides. In conclusion, being informal or chaotic is not a problem. There are never problems. There are opportunities for people to appropriate space. And there's always formality within informality, order within chaos. As landscape architects, we need to revere that. We need to find that invisible order, the invisible code behind the informal and chaotic phenomenon, and deeply understand what really makes things, what really makes this work. And jumping, I think this is the last one.
Okay,
yes,
thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Jason Hall. It's a truly inspiring talk, and it's quite an amazing observation and set of interventions. According to the agenda, now I will give the floor to the audience to ask any questions. Yeah, so if you want to ask a question orally, you can just speak up, okay? If you want to send your question to me, that's good. Also, just send me the message in the chat box, okay? Thank you. So Ashley, do you want to start?
Hi, Ashley.
Why do I feel like I'm being called on in a class?
I just, yeah.
Oh, sure. I'm not sure this is going to come out as a question, but more as let's hear your thoughts on it. But very good to see you, Jason, and to hear your talk. Not a challenge, but maybe redefining informal a little bit here. Informal activities are, I would argue, they're not only local or place specific. Informal economies, for instance, often happen at urban and regional scales. For instance, the redevelopment or integration of where you grew up, the displacement of that and whatever was informal there is happening at probably a significantly large scale. Let's see. I would argue that landscape architects should be asking what is quote unquote informal in any context that they work in, as you do, and indeed recognize informal relations across and between scales. This is necessary because you, as a landscape architect or planner, could be displacing or erasing informal support systems of people, economic or cultural. And we could even make some parallels to complex environmental or ecological systems that get displaced in similar ways when they're not recognized. You say that you provide micro infrastructures, quote unquote, to register, enhance, or provide informality. And I feel like again and again on each of the aspects of your projects you presented, you're looking for it, and then you're recognizing it and you're enhancing it in some way or translating it in some way. But designers are often in very compromised positions in profit-driven firms. And I would argue that there has to be another side to this in terms of being able to recognize it, not necessarily drawing it when you can't, and even sometimes a lot of the technical means that we have to represent things that we're required to do cannot represent those informal networks. But we have to be very, very careful that we don't displace the ones that are there or compromise them. So that's an initial thought, that it's not just about providing informality or responding to it by doing something informal or encouraging it. It's also being sure that you don't displace what's already there in whatever project at whatever scale you're working on. So that's a first point, and I have a very, very minor question to add on to that. You present your work and yourself full of disclaimers. You say that you're not doing the right research or that you're not doing the right projects. That's how you started off your talk today. I'm wondering if you make that disclaimer when you're talking to designers all the time, and do you find it necessary to start off in that position? That's all.
Thank you, Ashley. That's a very good question.
Is it a question or?
Well, the first one is, do you agree with me on what I'm saying, that even if you can't draw it or recognize it or design informality, you have to be very, very careful not to displace it at whatever scale you're working. So that's just a comment, really. And the second one was about the disclaimers that you make at the beginning of your talk, saying that you don't do the right research, you don't do the right projects. Right in terms, in a quotation sense, not in a sense of you are doing good work, you are doing the right thing, but in terms of what's expected of you. Do you find that that's necessary to make that disclaimer every time that you present your work to designers?
Not really. Probably just in front of Jianbing.
Yes.
We are working with different scales, and no, not really. I guess I do think I'm just being sarcastic. I think all the time, and I do think my work is very important, and particularly for Chinese students, and they seldom get taught in in a class that when you design things, you should really looking at the existing conditions already there. Sometimes they just destroy the conditions. So I think it's, I do believe my research is very valuable. And this is, I've been doing this research for 10 years now. And for the university publication, it's just a shit research topic, because cannot use this for publications. So, but I do think, I mean, I really enjoy doing this research. So I won't really say anything like negative in front of designers, in front of the students. And probably just in today's occasion, Jianbing asked me to give this talk, and I do think my talk, it doesn't really connect to the topic of this seminar series, because the topic of the seminar is, I think, is huge. So I was curious. I think Jianbing, I mean, invite me into this lecture. So probably we do got something in common, right? I don't know. I mean, I would like to hear from you. I mean, so we're very different, but we discussed yesterday, last night. I think we have something really in common, very similar things. You are not just doing research on the top. You also looking at very specific, very unique person and analyze their character, behavior, mood in the public space. So I think I would like to. I'm just being sarcastic, actually.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
don't take it very serious. But I do agree. I totally agree with your first not question, but kind of comments. Informality happened at different scales. It's not just about informal activities. It's also about informal economies. But the thing is that the very bad thing is when landscape architect, when designer come, they destroy the informal qualities of the site and formalize it and in a totally westernized way, Western way. So I think this is, as a landscape architect, has to be very careful when we working with a site. And so I totally agree with Ashley. Thanks for your beautiful comments.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I would say Jason is a very humble person. That's the reason probably he says that at the very beginning. I know him for, I think it's more than 5 years, right? I would say if you are not proud of your work, you are not consistent. So for so many years on this wonderful journey, right? So appreciate your work very much. I think if we talk about the informality, I think many colleagues in division of landscape architecture in Hong Kong, you actually are quite informal in different ways, you know. So we are trying to promote a lot of values which are not very visible or very significant, and top-down approaches or systems. For me, it's like I think the individual's perception and individual's feelings, the individual health and well-being is fundamentally important for every society, normally in the West and the East. So, so we have, I think we have the common values. I believe, if my memory is not wrong, I think your work has been widely recognized and accepted by the society, Chinese society, especially in the last 2 years. You have been frequently reported by the most important media And as you can you just showed at the very beginning of this talk, the work has been documented by the many important platforms, medias. So I just want to ask, what is your experience of being from like a new scholar to a quite influential scholar or designer, whatever you want to call yourself, and how this kind of informal experience can really bring some positive or even not that positive impacts on your career.
Thanks, Jianbing. Very flattered again. My work didn't really recognize by society. I did 3 supermarket project. They destroyed my 3 supermarkets, my wet markets. So I don't know. I mean, I won't call myself a scholar, and I'm not a scholar at all. I don't really write, and I cannot write. I think I'm just losing my writing skills, and living in a place like in China, and you don't really have time to read. Not like when you're teaching HKU, probably you got lots of time doing readings, but here just everything's so quick. And I got another meeting at 8:30. So everyone is so quick, everything is so quick. It's happened just immediately. And I don't know. I won't say I'm a scholar. I would say I'm an activist. And all these years I learned. I don't really read books anymore since I came back from Australia, but I learned things from my students, and I learned things from the people living next to my apartment. I learned things from the street vendors, and they became the books for me to understand what made a landscape architect really. So I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a career. I mean, I just mucking around in China and doing my mapping workshops. So I guess when you take off these pressures, being a scholar, being a professor, and doing publications, writing papers, I think you will feel free again. And this is the freedom, I guess, I really need to do the things I really enjoy in China, and not just for the academic achievements, but just for my interest. So what's your question again, Jianbing? Did you ask my question? Or?
It's enough. Yeah. I think it's a good answer, actually.
So it didn't really affect my career. I mean, in my parents' eyes, I'm just a loser. I mean, I've been a backpacker teacher for around 5 years now, and since 2015. Actually, I applied for a position at HKU, and the dean didn't really accept me. They said they need a scholar. So I went back to mainland China and do this shit. So it really, I think it really an opportunity for me. I mean, it changed my life, being nomadic, being homeless, not the homeless, but being homeless. I get to see amazing things, amazing people, and I have done like 120 mapping workshops over the five years. So I'm very proud of myself. Yes. So I don't know. I mean, I won't have a really specific career and in the future, I don't know if I'm a landscape architect or I'm an architect or I'm an urban designer, but who cares? It really doesn't matter. So
yeah,
just really, it's not really good talking here. So
let's see if we have any questions from the audience. Yeah, you can speak in Chinese. I can translate for you.
oh, that's good. I just can't speak English anymore. I guess haven't spoken English much in past 5 years. So I'm learning Cantonese now. So actually, can you speak Cantonese? I'm learning Cantonese now. So yeah, you can ask me in Chinese and Mandarin. So
yeah.
like my English is, when I talk about my English, I just I feel like I'm an idiot. But I think jumping, one thing I would mention, I would raise, as no one Chinese students are too shy to ask questions. It's not that I guess the informal practice, it's not just happened in China. I mean, it happened everywhere, but it's just a very different. And I think, and there's a term called cultural practice. What was it called? I mean, the cultural practice of a place and plays a very important role in creating spatial conditions, and designers have to understand how people use and read spaces, just what I said, before they making new rules and conditions. But we cannot simply adopt Western concepts of space making and literally translated into the Chinese context. This is what landscape architects are doing in China today. And Chinese people have very different cultural practices in public space compared to those in Western cities. For example, in China, people like to appropriate public space boundaries between public and private and are so blurry. And it's not like very clear like what happened in Western context. A public space can be easily transformed into what that one think is personal space through appropriation. Like informal street vending is such a phenomenon in China, and we cannot deny that it's part of our culture. The moment when a street vendor put down the props on the ground and the vendor join a personal boundary to create a commercial space. And when the vendors is gone, the boundary disappears and another type of an informal occupation takes over. So this type of ephemeral, I would say ephemeral occupation of space can never be captured in a bird's eye view or through a top-down model. So I think the cultural practice is really important knowledge in researching and informality. I just add something.
Yes, it's truly important. And I would say it's not only the Western or Eastern separation. It's also quite a local, quite specific to different subcultures. So we see the different things in different cities, basically. I would argue that Guangzhou probably has a different culture from Beijing or other northern cities.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I just want to share a story I observed in Chiang Mai, in Thailand, 2 years ago when we did the studio there. It's a wet and dry market, a very popular market. Early morning, 5 o'clock. The young monks will come out from the temples and they walk to the front of the market. They stand every 20 meters to each other, around 5 monks, and and then the public will supply the food to the basket the monks bring, and they will kneel down and pray for themselves and their families. And that place is very chaotic and even a little bit dirty. Market entry area. It becomes like a temple, a temporary temple, and a very spiritual space. I think that image also gave me quite a strong sense of the informal and formal, this kind of connection and transition. And so that's just a response to your comments on the cultural practice. Yeah, thank you so much. I would say, yeah, if any, do we have other questions? You can ask in Chinese, and Jason, you feel free free to answer in Chinese also. Jiali, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
I would, since you already contributed a lot with Ada on this organization of the talks,
Yes.
I would give you an opportunity to ask a question.
Oh my God.
This is not an opportunity at all.
No, it's my honor. Yeah, so like I do have like some questions. Like first of all, like Jason, you have dedicated to this job for like over 5 years. You started during your starting from your PhD. So like during this 5 years, what's the biggest change that you have witnessed for this social issue? Because I think you did a very, very good job to make this informality, like this social issue, visible to the public. More and more people start to care about the people, and more students are like very interested in joining your workshop. But like for you and for those people who actually live there, what is the biggest change that you brought to them through this design?
And it's very small, to be honest. And as a landscape architect, we are very weak.
Yeah.
And sometimes the top-down intervention is so strong, it's so powerful. And so I would use improve the things that I have done. I guess I wish they could improve their life in a little better way. Since my PhD, I didn't really change. I still be very silly and still myself. I didn't really change at all. This is the most stupid thing I think I should change. I should become very arrogant and ego, and I should do something that more profitable. No, I didn't change. They gave me a title called artist, which make me very angry. And all the projects that I've been doing, all the projects I showed, they say it's not landscape architect work. It's artist. It's artwork. So this is what happened in my situation. Today they call me more like an artist than a landscape architect or architect. I don't rebuild houses. I don't rebuild parks, formal space. I'm doing this kind of city interventions and to make a voice, to make people hold. We cannot just doing our design in the traditional ways. We cannot just come into a place to destroy what is already there, and we can do much better as landscape architects. So which is a bit regretful for me to give me this title, artist. So, but I don't really care. And I'm a director of a gallery now. So this is, I didn't really change at all. So I still Jason, 5 years ago.
Yeah, because like I'm feeling like as a young student, as a landscape designer, we all have this great passion that we have this opportunity to witness so many issues like environmental issues, social issues, but we have great passion and responsibility to change them. But actually the thing that we can do is very little. And it feels sometimes very frustrated. So maybe that's one of the reasons I changed from a designer to a scholar. But I also saw you have this kind of great passion and like ability to witness things. And it seems that you try different roles to solve the issues. Like you are curator and also like educator. So like it inspired me a lot. Yeah, I think that's just what I want to say, because we feel frustrated from time to time and we really want to change things. Yeah.
I don't have passion as well. I mean, even being an activist, and sometimes being survival is very important thing here. So sometimes when you have dreams and when you still study at university, but after you finished and you probably just forget your dreams and you are looking for more salaries. The salaries is important, but I think in China, I mean, China is a very probably the last common statements, and I think China is it's weird. I mean, China is it's a very fast-changing country compared to many Western cities. I found the Chinese cities are much more exciting, and that's why I'm living here like for 5 years already. It's dynamic, it's energetic, and cities in China are changing all the time. It's an opportunity and also a challenge for designers in China, or particularly for students from HKU. And how could you design something in a short period of time that must have the capacity and flexibility to deal with such a horrendous speed of change and transformation of cities? I think this is a challenge for the students and still studying landscape architecture in the campus. But one suggestion I think I can make, or probably I shouldn't make, but I will give a try. I think one suggestion, if you Jumping last now asked me to make some suggestions, and I don't think I can make suggestions. But one suggestion I can make is you have to try to understand the idea of change and how we can respond to our immediate environment. And while you're working in China, or if you wish to, if you go to China and to have a career, and you must look at very specific situations of cities through a one's eye view. You may work with existing conditions and take the existing patterns. I really like the words, the existing patterns of use as a point of departure in achieving a maximum effect and with minimum design gesture. As I mentioned in the lecture, a small scale gesture might not be affecting the whole city, but it can certainly enrich our environment. So just have faith, not like me, have faith, and remember small is the big. I think Peng Wei, Jianbing invited Peng Wei to talk next time. I think he will talk something very, very small. And I'm also very looking forward to the next lecture. I think Jianbing, I need to attend another one. That's it. Jianbing, can you hear me?
Professor Zhang, you're muted.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. I just received the comments from our audience, so I shared in chat box to everyone. Yes, I know you have another meeting to go. Thank you very much. Bring this extremely super. I use the word. Okay, super valuable, super valuable speech. I hope it will benefit the students and colleagues in the division and in universities and in the field. Thank you so much, and also thank you for the attention from all the audience. And I hope you have a good night and a good day. Okay, thank you.
All right, going to have my dinner.
Yeah, good. Bye bye.
Thank you, Ashley. Bye bye, Ashley. Bye bye, Jianbing.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Have a good night. Bye bye.
Yeah.